And turn on the
Cut
caption.
down, please, on a Zoom for work. Yeah.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Glad to see you again. I hope you all had a good Turkey Day and a good holiday. And I guess most importantly, that you all took some time off and had a chance to get a break. So let's jump in and get started here. And as always, I'd like to thank our sponsors, Care First Health Plan, Valley of the Sun United Way, Satellite Broadcasting, Communications, Khajiit, Triad Wireless, and Karen Ziegler Consulting. And then we have a few new people on the call this morning. So if you would like to, Rick Abasta, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Good morning. My name's Rick Abasta, and I work with Cellular One as their Navajo Tribal Relations Specialist.
Good. You want to say anything more about that?
I've just been working with chapters across the Navajo Nation, as well as with the tribal government on the legislative and executive branch sides of the house, I guess. And, you know, glad to be a part of your meeting today.
Good
Morning.
Glad to see you joining us this morning. A lot of interest on tribal needs out there, so we're glad to have you. Gerardo, am I pronouncing that correctly? I think you joined us last week, but you want to introduce yourself again real quick? Gerardo Martinez.
Sorry.
No problem.
Sorry. Can you hear me?
Yep, sure can.
Okay, so sorry. I didn't know if I was muted. So my name is Gerardo Martinez. I was here in the last two sessions. We just bought a company here in Southern Arizona. Our name of the company, is NGX Tech Solutions, and we provide internet to Nogales to Tucson, all the rural areas.
Okay. Thank you. Alexa, I think this is your first time with us. Do you want to introduce yourself real quick, please?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Alexa Tarvid. I work for Arizona State University as their digital navigator lead, which basically means I'll be working with the team who focuses on ASU's digital equity projects and outreach. So thank you, Steve, for inviting me here. I'm glad I can make it.
You bet. Good. You guys are doing some great stuff, so appreciate it. And let's see who else. I know we've got some other people. Michael, you want to introduce yourself? Michael Lazar?
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Michael Lazar from CyberLogic Security. We're a cybersecurity consulting firm assisting companies here in Arizona and also nationally to improve their cybersecurity posture.
Okay, great. Thanks, Michael. I'm glad you made it. We had some challenges getting emails to him, so we're glad you made it. And Stephen Burrell, I know you've been on some time ago, but you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, thanks. Good morning, everybody. Steve Burrell. I'm the CIO here at Northern Arizona University.
Great. You have anything you want to say about what you guys are into these days?
Well, that would take a long time.
Okay.
Happy to do that perhaps in the future. Thanks.
Okay, we'll do that. Okay, anybody else that's new that I missed? Okay, well, I haven't seen Sandeep yet. I hope he's going to be here this morning. But in the meantime, I'd like to welcome back one of our folks that we haven't seen in a while, Leah Marquez Peterson. Many of you know Leah with the Arizona Corporation Commission. And Leah, do you want to talk a little bit? I know we technically would you have you on later for updates, but you want to give us a little update on what's happening?
Yeah, happy to. Good morning to everybody. Good morning, Steve. Hopefully you can hear me okay.
Yep.
driving between Tucson and Phoenix, so doing that freeway route, as many of you do often, I'm sure. And if you're not familiar with the Corporation Commission, and I know many familiar names and faces here on the call, we regulate your utilities, railroad, and pipeline, but we actually have limited jurisdiction in telecommunications. So in this world, in this context, we regulate 911 coverage. We approve, telecommunication carriers in the state of Arizona. We administer the Arizona Universal Service Fund, and we have been pretty engaged in all of those different issues before the commission recently. As all of you know, we just had elections. We have 2 new commissioners joining us, Kevin Thompson and Nick Myers. The AUSF issue I'd come before this group with in previous months is still out there percolating, and certainly still taking input from any of you on the call who would like to speak to the AUSF issue. And it'll be brought before us again when our new commissioners come online and we see what direction we want to go. This fee that is charged to customers throughout the state, a couple different options we can go. We can eliminate it, or we can redirect it to potentially broadband use, because right now it's landline focused in high cost areas, or utilize it for some other purpose. There've been lots of conversations, so we're still kind of in the middle of all of that discussion, but the decision to hold off to the 2 new commissioners are starting. But happy to answer any questions. And we are elected statewide, so we cover every corner of the state and do a lot of work in rural Arizona and with tribal communities, and all the different jurisdictions related to electricity and water and gas and all of our utilities throughout the state that are private and investor owned. But happy to answer any questions, Steve, if anyone has any.
Okay, thank you, Leah. Anybody have any questions for Leah? Leah was involved with us early on when we first started this task force, and really appreciate her participation with us. So moving on. Who joined us this morning? So I don't think I've seen Sandeep yet. I'm going to send him a text. Give me just a moment, please. Nope, looks like he sent me a text this morning. Okay, so I got a note from Sandeep that he will be on about 8:15. So we're going to charge ahead with the meeting this morning. Anyway, so let's talk a little bit about the FCC Affordable Connectivity Outreach Grant Program. As many of you know, that grant is going to be providing funding to help provide opportunities for people to get connected to ACP. It's a pretty exciting program, and the application deadline is January the 9th. And the grant provides, just to read their language, provides eligible governmental and non-governmental entities with the funding and resources needed to increase awareness of and participation in the Affordable Connectivity Program among those eligible households most in need of affordable connectivity. So that's the purpose of that program. We are, most of you probably know that there is no state agency who is responsible for developing a plan. There is no review process at the state level. There is no application that the state has to make, that those applications go directly to the FCC. So we discussed this a little bit last time, that we would like to convene all the folks that are planning to apply. And I didn't send them notice last week just because of the holiday. I figured that emails get lost and all that sort of thing. So I decided not to, excuse me, not to send the meeting notice, but I would like to schedule a meeting this week. I will just report on this, and anybody else who wants to share stuff, that I got a note from Robert Alvarado this morning, and he could not make the meeting today. but he said he wanted to let you know that they're going to apply for the FCC grant and looking at a regional approach for their 5 states. They're meeting with the presidents of each of their states, marketing, events, team, and key programs this week to finalize their model and budget. And that he'll try and get in touch with me tomorrow. So again, I will try to schedule that meeting this week as time is wasting and holidays are coming up. So anyway, anybody else want to say anything more about the outreach grant?
Steve, this is Leah. May I make a comment?
Sure.
Yeah, I wondered if it was appropriate for this item or others if we had a conversation with Governor-elect's transition team, because they're gathering a lot of information now, not only selecting people that will be in charge of various departments, but probably feedback. I know in the commission, we're particularly concerned all the federal dollars that are flowing. Who is responsible and what agency, and do we have a coordinated approach related to electricity and water and other issues that we're tackling? Has there been conversation on your board about having that same conversation with her transition team about telecommunications?
We have not had that discussion, but it's probably a good idea for us to get on board about that. So just in response to your comment, that I can't comment on their plans in terms of water and electricity and so forth, but from a broadband perspective, and that's what we'll hear from Sandeep later today, is that the broadband office is certainly responsible from a broadband perspective in developing the plan, applying for the grants. They have done a great job. Sandeep has really picked up where Jeff left off in getting the grants funded and so forth. So he is certainly, from a telecom perspective, is the guy, at least from my perspective. I don't know if anybody has any other comments about that. Nope. Okay. And moving on, a couple of announcements. There's a couple of cybersecurity events that are coming up. Excuse me, and would like to just bring you up to date about that. I was hoping Michael Shivers would be here this morning, but so the Arizona Technology Council has their Cyber Threat Response Alliance, along with the Cyber Threat Response Alliance, ACTRA, for their 7th annual cybersecurity breakfast on December the 7th. And that will be in Phoenix, or in Scottsdale, excuse me. Should be a good event. Mark, do you want to say anything more about that? I don't know if Carla's online yet.
Sure, and I'll put a link in the chat in a minute. I'll go fish it up. It is a very good annual event. You know, a place to connect with cybersecurity professionals. Here a pretty good program. I don't have the agenda in front of me. It is an in-person event only. So the location is called Venue 8600 in North Scottsdale. And I believe the cost is $35, but Carla will probably have a code for us and we can confirm that.
Yeah. Okay, anybody have anything more they want to say about that? You know, as you know, we're very much interested in cybersecurity. And while I don't think I will make that particular event, it's a great way to network and find people who might be interested in collaborating with us on cybersecurity initiatives. So I encourage you all to attend that event. And then again, Michael Shivers, are you on or not? Don't think so. Couldn't make it this morning. Well, Michael Shivers is coordinating the annual Cyber Southwest Symposium, Cyber Southwest Symposium, which will be here in Tucson at the U of A Student Union. And that's a collaboration of various cybersecurity organizations here in Arizona. And he has provided a comp code for any of you who need to apply before December the 2nd. I had a great conversation with Michael. I connected with him. I met him many years ago. but I had a great conversation with him, and he is very interested in collaborating with us and perhaps bringing some of his colleagues to the table to help us address some of the cybersecurity issues that we were interested in. So again, both of those events will be in the email follow-up to this meeting, as I always send, with links to those particular events. So anyway, those are a couple of things that are coming up. And give me just a second here. I want to make sure that I did this. Okay. Let me update my page here just a second. Okay. So moving on, let's jump into some updates, and then when Sandeep joins us, we'll turn it over to him. So Mala is not here today. She is on vacation. Holly, I think I saw you. Are you here? And do you want to say anything?
Yes, I am here, Steve. I don't have any updates this morning.
Okay. You'll be seeing, and not to get political, but you will be seeing some changes, I assume.
Yes, we are preparing for transition. Yes.
For those of you who don't know, that the state library is underneath the what is it? What
The Secretary of State.
Secretary of State.
Mhm.
I have a good memory, it's just a little bit short. So yes, so lots of changes expected with the elections coming up.
Yes, we'll be welcoming new leadership at the Secretary of State's office.
Yeah. And let's see, several people have joined us. Let me see who joined us this morning. Sorry if I'm a little bit discombobulated this morning. So the Arizona Department of Education, not sure if anybody's on this morning. Karina Jones, are you here this morning? She is not. Karina is the Deputy Associate Superintendent for IT and Program Engagement. And she has attended several of our past meetings, and I've had conversations with her, and we have a meeting scheduled, I believe, next week for us to have a conversation about how this task force can support their new plans and strategies. So well, you'll hear more about that in the future. Sophia, I don't believe you're online. Mylan, you're not online. Kelly, are you there? Kelly's not there. Shelby, I believe you're online though.
Yes, I'm here. Good morning. Shelby Brown with Office of Digital Teaching and Learning. I don't really have any updates at this time.
Okay. All righty.
Steve, this is John. Just the point that similar to Secretary of State, that there's a new superintendent of public instruction, so there will be transition at that agency as well.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So we'll see how that goes. Thank you, John.
I see Mylan, Steve.
Mylan, are you online?
Yeah, there's this feature, Steve, where you can see all of everybody's faces if you go to gallery mode.
Yeah.
Hey, Steve. Yeah, I'm here.
Hey, Mylan, so you want to give us any updates this morning?
Nothing really new is happening right now. Got a lot of audits of the ECF program.
Mylan, excuse me, you want to introduce yourself real quickly?
Yeah, Mylan Eaton. I'm the State E-Rate Director for Schools with the Department of Education.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, we got a lot of audits coming, are happening now, and more to come on the ECF program. And the ECF program was the program that provided laptops or devices, as well as hotspots and home internet access. So they're starting to audit all those programs now.
So they're auditing the schools for that program?
Yep. If the schools ask for 100,000 hotspots, they want to see usage for those 100,000, and if they're not being used during a 30-day period, the school's going to start paying the bills. And So we have lots of audits. We have lots and lots of things going right now.
Do you have any sense, Mylan, about how that program has been used?
I do, but none that I can discuss.
Okay. All righty. John Kelly, do you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah, so with Mylan on the line here, I just wanted to, and with Leah Marcus Peterson on the line, given the discussion and the history with E-rate and Universal Service Fund, I think there might be a need for a sidebar conversation about that and potentially talking to the legislature and the governor-elect's office about some additional matching funds for some of the 80%, 90% free and reduced lunch schools to enhance their ability to draw down E-rate funds, which will continue to be a challenge. Milo and I have talked about it, but given the audience here, I think it's good to put a marker on that conversation.
Yeah, thanks, John. Thanks for bringing that up. We've allocated almost all of the $8 million that came from Corporation Commission in the initial round 5-6 years ago. And I've got 100,000 left, and that's going to be used up this year by a couple of very remote rural schools. So yeah, that's a great idea. It's time to have that sidebar with Commissioner Leah Marquez, and include you, John. You're pretty wrapped up in all this stuff with us.
And John and Mylan, happy to have the conversation. Just email me separately and we'll set something up.
Sounds great.
So John and Leah, Leah, to follow up on your comment about having a conversation with the governor's transition team, is this the time to do that, or do we need to let them get motivated, get organized a little bit, or what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think they are focused more on the people, the structure of the governor's team, more than the content, I believe. And John, correct me if I'm wrong. So I'd say let's wait till the dust settles and people are in place and then have the conversation. But the reason I brought up the transition team initially was because if we felt a gap or there wasn't someone leading kind of the coordination of all the grants, that's something I think structurally a governor's transition team would need to know. Sounds like it's covered in broadband for your comments, not so much about from a commission perspective.
Leah, could you repeat that? You broke up a little bit.
No, that it's not as coordinated from a federal grant solicitation perspective for electricity and water. So we are working on that a bit and thinking of the transition team. But it sounds like you've got a centralized place for broadband. So I think they're focused more on putting place in the various places that she needs, and there's transition more so than content.
So John and Mylan, you got excuse me, have any thoughts about any conversations about the Final Mile project and additional funding? The Department of Ed has really stepped up to move that project along, but I'm sure they could use more funding. Any thoughts about that?
Well, right now we have $3 million to utilize, and I'm in the process of vetting the different areas, different schools, different rural communities. And as soon as the vetting process is through, the Rural Schools Association will make the awards, and then we'll start those projects. So, you know, we had the 1.5 million for the proof of concept. It went really well. They gave us another 3 million. And as soon as I get a feel for where the needy spots are, I'll have a better idea of what we need financially to support those. The broadband maps that came out last week, or actually week before on Friday, are much better than the previous FCC broadband maps. So it makes it much easier for me to vet people now. When they say we don't have access, or our access is very bad, or it's very expensive, I can actually reference the map, which I did all last week, and verify that, yes, these are areas that are in need. So that map's a great tool for us now.
Okay. Well, I suppose at some point we need to have a conversation about, you know, again, with the new legislature, new school superintendent, new governor, all kinds of new folks coming on about whether we need to think about any legislation. And perhaps that needs to be a discussion for us with maybe doing an update to the plan we did some time ago. Lots, of course, as you know, lots of stuff has changed. Lots of money has been coming in. A lot of folks are getting connected, but we probably need to update our plan at this point. So
Steve, I would only offer, I think, first of all, Commissioner Peterson is right that the transition team is mostly focused on the personnel issues. But when you look at the calendar and what has to happen between now and the new governor being sworn in, there's a lot of different initiatives that will have to be either confirmed, denied, or re-engineered or renamed, however you want to do it. I think the work that this task force has done with all the different stakeholder representatives has been really well received in the past. I just think maybe a little bit of a summary of where we are, where we've been, where we are, and where we need to go as far as unfinished business. We need to be ready to have those conversations. The broadband stuff is certainly, I think, better coordinated than some of the other things, but there's still shared responsibility between multiple agencies. So that this group has played a really good role in coordinating that. I think there are other areas that are less coordinated, but I think we have to be ready to have those conversations in the next week or two, just in case they become relevant sooner than you expect.
okay, thank you, John. We'll have to crank that up. As most of you know, I've been planning to do a leadership team meeting, but it's also, many of you know that my wife has some health issues. So some of the things I would have liked to have gotten done sooner just haven't happened. But it sounds like that now is a pretty critical time to move the process along. Any other comments about that before we move on?
Steve, this
Yeah,
is
Mark.
Mark. Just to the mapping, I think I mentioned it last week, but the FCC has now, besides launching the map, set a deadline for January 13th for the state's challenges to the map. That's happening over the holidays. Sandeep, of course, hopefully can talk to that. I believe that's one of the three elements of the pending RFI or RFQ that he's working on, but the timeline is pretty short for that. Encouragingly, however, they have set a date of June 30th for the release of the map at the level that will determine the state allocations for the BEAD money. Many or most of us thought that would be 1, 2, 3 quarters later. And if they slip, it certainly could be. But the 42.45 billion in BEAD funding, perhaps as much as 800 or million or a billion here in Arizona, no one can tell yet. That determination is currently scheduled for June 30th. So that's encouraging.
Good, thanks, Mark. And just FYI, and I assume you'll hear this from Sandeep also, that they had planned to release the RFQ and then decided they needed to wait till after Thanksgiving with people being gone and so forth. So anyway, I'm sure you'll hear that from Sandeep when he joins us in a little while. Moving on to digital inclusion updates. Cindy, do you have anything you want to share this morning?
Good morning. I was encouraged to hear CPLC going for the grant, and the Arizona Digital Inclusion Network will be happy to support that and collaborate in any way. And interested in here, I saw Common Sense, Drew Garner just put in chat that Common Sense is still considering the grant process. So yeah, it'll be interesting to follow. And I think our group has a lot of good ideas about outreach and a little more of the detail of what we can offer to that sort of an effort, to the proposals being developed.
Okay. So I think Robert, well, I don't want to speak for him, but the conversations I had with him previously, that he was certainly interested. When I talked to him, they hadn't made any decisions yet. So, but he was certainly open to looking for collaborations and partnerships. So Drew, you're online. So
He's
just,
gone offline.
Oh.
Yeah, he had to jump to another call. I just caught his text and because he wanted to make that announcement.
okay, thank you.
Okay.
And so just FYI, Elena is not here this morning. Her brother just died. And so any of you want to send her condolences, please feel free to do so. Aaron, you have anything you want to add?
Sorry. Oh, that's just awful. Sorry, taken aback by that. Good morning, everyone. Not too much to add beyond we're still exploring and we'll likely pursue the ACP grant in collaboration with partners, as we do all things with partners. We're also deep in the process of planning the charity dinner, the Digital Equity Charity Dinner that will take place on February 1st. The guest list is fast being formed. Invitations for our speakers have gone out. We are centering that around the idea of giving awards to incredible organizations across the state and around the country for folks who are doing amazing work in this space, inclusive of folks working in connectivity, community organizations, a Lifetime Achievement Award, folks who are stellar at closing the homework gap, and so on and so forth. So it should be a fantastic event. It actually is following on a Smart City, Smart Region event that's being hosted earlier in that day that has a focus of digital equity. So the entire Smart Region event is focused on digital equity. So be on the lookout for information around that as well. We continue to make progress on the Maricopa grant. For those of you who aren't familiar, it's a $34 million grant that Sun Corridor Network, Digital Equity Institute, and ASU were awarded. We will be releasing an omnibus RFP for that work in the upcoming weeks. So we are looking to be as inclusive as we possibly can be. So folks who are interested in helping to support that and to advance that work over the course of the next couple of years, be on the lookout. We'll share more information with this group as we have it available to make sure that everyone knows what's coming and can participate at the level that they would like. So we are really excited about working with everyone on that. And I think that might be all for today. As usual, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. And if you see a survey come your way, please fill it out. We're in the process of collecting all kinds of data. Those data are incredibly helpful as we seek to really understand the state of play across Arizona and what we need to do. Hold on one second. Hello? Okay, sorry. Sorry, my door chime went off and I didn't know who the heck was opening doors in my house and what we need to do to fill gaps that we are identifying as part of that. There's skip logic built into those, so you won't have to spend a terribly long amount of time in the survey. Depending on your area of focus and the sector in which you work, it should take you no more between 7 and 10 minutes to complete it. So just a heads up on that. Thanks so much.
Okay, thanks, Aaron. I don't believe Nicole. Sandeep, I see you joined us, and we're going to turn it over to you in just a moment.
Sure, sir. Thank you. And sorry about the late. I had another meeting at 7:30 in the morning.
No problem. I know that that you always have a conflicting meeting most of the time. So
I need to hire more people. I'm posting jobs, so please feel free to help me with that.
Okay, well, we'll get to that in just a moment.
Sure.
So I don't believe Nicole is on. Derek, I think you're online. Anything, any updates from you? Are you still there?
No, not today, Steve.
Okay. And moving on. So we heard from Mylan and Rory. Do you guys have anything more to say about the Final Mile project?
No, we're fairly close to finishing St. John. We'll have it done this week. Keep running into sniglets like lift trucks breaking down. And should have Forest Lakes completed next week. That's on our current schedule.
Okay. Anything else, Mylan? Anything else on the Final Mile project? Okay. So John Kelly, if you're available after this meeting, I'd like to connect with you for a little while. Okay.
I'm available.
Okay, so so now we're going to turn it over to Sandeep, and I think most of you know that Sandeep has just been appointed our new, excuse me, Vice President of Infrastructure and State Broadband Director at the Commerce Authority. And so, first of all, congratulations, Sandeep. We've already had a good communication with you, but look forward to continuing our collaboration with you. So with that, Sandeep, I'm going to stop sharing. I don't know if you have anything that you want to share, but
yeah,
anyway.
I don't have anything to share today, but I would like to give you all a quick update. Let me start with an quick introduction about myself. A lot of you here are friends and mentor, so I appreciate that. But those who you don't know me, I was Jeff's deputy assistant broadband director before Jeff's departure. So fairly new in this job. For last 6 months, I was helping Jeff and Arizona Commerce Authority to execute all the broadband projects, especially my role in ABDG grant. After Jeff's departure, I went through interview process and I was selected by the ACA leadership panel. Thank you so much, everyone in this call who helped me going through that process, and thank you for your support and mentorship. Quickly coming back to the update, I have a major update in the capital funding project, which is that $100 million ABDG grant we just completed this year. If you all know, there's already a delay disbursing those funds, but we are able to go through multiple meetings with Treasury, and we figured out it's the delay is not from our side or ACA. It's mostly the state submitted application at the very last day. So all the applications are in Treasury's queue. We received, before Thanksgiving, we received a form around like 20 pages along with questions from our awardees regarding our awardees, all the 20 awards. So we had to go through an explanation process that why we selected this particular project, etc., etc. Without going through too much details, we filled out all the application and additional question Treasury had, and I'm sending back those application with support documents by end of today. After meeting my whole team and Brian Sherman, who's my boss. So we are hoping, I don't want to promise anything in a public forum like this, but we are hoping that Treasury would be able to resolve all this funding issue by end of January. That's the tentative. It can be before that. There are states who started getting the money, but I'm just keeping myself on safe side, and I would say end of January. That's the tentative date we got from Treasury at this point. So the awardees would be able to start working in the projects from February. There will be a final contract, draft copy of a final contract, which will go out probably second week of December about ABDG grant. There will be some modification after getting the feedback from our awardees, like the initial reporting time, which was changed from 20 days to 30 days. Just to make sure that we are complying with this current supply chain issue, reporting issue, everything else. Also, at the same time, we are partnering with a consulting company to, especially Salesforce. We're looking at various options, but we are talking to Salesforce right now to build a tracking system. Treasury really wants us to track all the parameters by quarter, meaning the amount of fiber deployed, the amount of household covered, before what was the speed in that household, and after what was the speed. Basically, they are implementing a lot more compliance component, which we did not expect before. So most of the question we are responding right now is related to the compliance. It has nothing to do with ACA at this point, delaying this whole process. It's most of their question we are trying to answer when it comes to the compliance. So that's the update I have regarding that $100 million grant, but I'm hopeful that by end of January, we'll be able to resolve this process and we'll be able to resume our work. deploying this network. Any question regarding that? Okay, I'll move to the next topic. Today around like 10 o'clock-ish, we will be publishing an RFQ regarding digital equity, BEAD, and mapping. Please feel free to look at our website. Some of you who are in ACA mailing list will probably receive a notification. I would like to emphasize on this point, the way this RFQ was designed. If an individual consultant just want to take 1 point out of that RFQ, it's a huge buffet option. So if someone wants to take just 1 point and would like to respond to that part of RFQ, that's completely possible. There are workforce component in there. Inside BEAD, there are digital equity. Digital equity component also has some part of the workforce, community engagement. If someone thinks they are eligible, they can thank you, John, for posting the site. They are very much welcome to respond to that RFQ. Everything will be considered. We are looking for multiple vendors at this point, our stakeholders to work with.
So if I can just comment,
Yeah.
Sandeep, that as soon as I get that RFQ from Sandeep, I will forward it to the task force.
Sure, I'll send you the link, Steve.
Sure.
Same thing for mapping. As you all know that we are right now in a time crunch when it comes to mapping. Our primary target is to close the RFQ on December 16th. So if it's posted today, it will be open for 3 weeks. On December 16th, once we close the RFQ, there will be an independent panel who will be evaluating those RFQ. At this point, we have to little bit take a different way. We'll most probably finalize a mapping vendor within a week of December 16th, the moment the deadline closes, because you all know there is a challenge process deadline coming, which is January 13th. So our primary target is to figure out or select the RFQ mapping vendor within a week after December 16th. For digital equity, BEAD, workforce, for any other scope of work, I think we will wait until second week of January or 15 January, something like that, because we still have time. Mapping, we really need to move quickly, and a lot of you are in our mapping meeting. If anyone is interested, please feel free to let me email me. I will add you in that group. But we will be reaching out to all our local stakeholder in town, community, and county level to gather the mapping information. We came up with a framework inside the ACA. We will start deploying this framework pretty soon here. So you will start you will see emails coming from me and our Senior Vice President of Rural Development, Kit Watkins, pretty soon here. That's pretty much all the major update I have. Steve, if you are okay, I would like to take questions right now. If anyone has any question, I would be able to answer it right now.
Sure. Before we move on, Sandeep, there's a plan for you guys to hire some additional staff.
Yes.
Can
yes.
you say anything about that?
Thanks for reminding me. So we'll be hiring actually tentatively 4 staffs at this point. Of course, the assistant broadband director. Specifically, we are looking to start with a GIS specialist and a grants and compliance manager. Coming from a private industry, I do have idea about grants and compliance management, but I'm not an expert by any means or form. I'll be needing help where someone can help me with the grants management, especially the management of grants where we already disbursed the money or we are going to, like that $100 million, and any other compliance related issue with BEAD and digital equity. Unfortunately, NTIA keeps updating the requirements pretty much every single month. Regarding BEAD and digital equities, it's very hard to track unless I'm attending all the meetings, and I'm just only one person. I feel really bad I keep promising Steve that I'll be there at 7:30, but there is always something. So I need multiple people and then 2 program managers, one for digital equity, one for one for broadband. So basically at this point, we are looking to hire 4 to 5 people. But if you ask me, is there any priority? I would start with a grants and compliance manager plus a GIS person because of the need in mapping.
So Sandeep, do you have a timeline of when those positions will be posted, or are they already posted, and what the time frame is to hopefully get people hired?
Those are on Brian's desk right now, Steve. He's reviewing that for one final time, and we will send it to our HR team by end of tomorrow, I'm assuming, and the post will be up mid this week or end of this week.
Okay. And again,
and just an FYI, it's an open posting. We will keep the posting open until we find the perfect candidate. So please feel free to apply. And also, just because it's holiday time and Christmas is coming or New Year is coming, if we find the right candidate, we will go ahead and start the hiring process. As you all know, we don't have to go through the state hiring process. We have our own hiring process, which is expedited. The need is severe right now, so we'll expedite the whole process if we find the right candidate.
okay, thank you. Questions for Sandy? Oh, come on, you guys are quiet. He gave you a pretty, so Sandeep, I know that
Hey,
when Jeff
Steve.
was there, he always said, I'm one guy. He's kind of the Lone Ranger, and so you are still right now until you get your team, but at least it's exciting that you will have a team to help you with all the work that needs to get done.
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, Vaughn, did you have something?
I'm sorry, I came in just a tad late. I got tied up getting online. Was what I'm always curious about the rural area and how well we're going to get that covered out there.
Vaughn, are you asking about the mapping?
Yeah, and it'd be the mapping in this case. Yes. Okay.
Vaughn, I'd be happy to talk to you about that offline. We are actually going through some data collection process with some of the utility company and rural co-ops, which is a really, really great source. And also another source I cannot disclose at this point in a public forum. We are just signing NDAs and process going through that. If you'd like to touch base with me offline, I would be able to explain more. But I can assure you the framework we came up with that will not miss any rural address, even though in addition to that, I would say there are a lot of addresses missing from tribal nations. We're also defining them based on the rural co-op data, some of the E911 data, et cetera, without going into too much details. So yes, we are going through that data sorting process, but right now we are signing some NDAs. So I would be able to give you better update next week, or we can touch base.
Thank you very much. I put my email in the chat session. Thank you very much, sir.
Saw that, sir. Sorry, everyone. There is an interagency communication going on right now, and also with some other nonprofit, our educational partners. I don't want to put the word out there right now, but yeah, we are working towards that. And just to take a step back, at this point with January 13th deadline, there are a lot of chatter going on right now in State Broadband Leaders Network. I think, if I'm not wrong, at least 80% of the states are going to go through some of them are thinking about litigation. We are not thinking that far, but they are going to contact their senators and the National Governors Association to get an extension on that deadline. But I'm still running with the January 13th deadline. Now, we cannot do a quality of service verification by that deadline. It's very tight, but we can definitely figure out the missing addresses, and we can at least file the missing addresses in that by that timeline.
Sandeep, this is Cindy Hogan. You've mentioned I think I heard you say something about a rural co-op, and I've heard that before, but I don't know who or what they are.
Like any electrical co-op or any city or municipalities, they are providing them their customer gas service or water or something. So we are basically pulling data from there.
I see.
So a lot of the addresses which can be missing from, I mean, my house address is missing from the FCC map, but I'm okay. I have gig service here at my home, but I just want to make sure that we are not missing address from the rural areas.
Perfect. Thank you.
Mark, not to put you on the spot, but you're pretty familiar with what some of the rural co-ops are doing. You want to make any comments about that?
There are 6 rural co-ops. Mojave, of course, had gotten a $1 million grant from the ACA's first $3 million tranche under the broadband program. But I don't have specific knowledge. I'm gonna defer, maybe Sandeep or John or others know specifics about the other 5 co-ops.
So Mark, there is a co-op association, I believe. Basically, Keith Watkins arranged that meeting. It's coming second week, like beginning of next week. We are meeting all of them in same room and basically presenting our ideas. We already met their government affairs person, so they have a whole association. They are all part of that association here in Arizona. So we are presenting in front. We already presented in front of them, but we are presenting in front of their CEOs and leadership team pretty soon.
That's great.
So it'd be great, Sandeep, if we could get some of their folks. Do they have an executive director or somebody who leads that association?
Yes.
So that'd be good for us to make that connection. Maybe you could help me with that.
Yeah, sure. And trust me, they have interest in this thing too. Out of the IIJA bucket, they're getting money for smart grid, and they will be needing some kind of connectivity to make this smart grid thing possible. So it's better to make that bridge right now. If the ISPs can hop into their pole and deploy from there, it will be easier for them in future to deploy those smart grid technologies.
So Sandy, do you want to, I'm sorry, do you want to also comment? So your job is not just broadband manager, but also infrastructure vice president. You want to talk a little bit about that, please?
Yes. So, you know, Brian and ACA leadership team, he always thought about one thing, that we will have this massive amount of fiber at the end of this BEAD funding. What we will be doing with this fiber. Some of the things we can definitely do is low-cost IoT deployment, like for our safety, public safety network, air quality monitoring, environmental reason, policy management based on this data collected through that IoT systems. A lot of the smart grid technology we can do. We have also submitted few applications on the autonomous vehicle testing system. And basically, our main target is to convert I-17 and I-19 corridor into a automated vehicle testing corridor. We already have fiber there. So some of the initiative directly, which Marissa Walker is heading in ACA, directly connects with broadband. So my job is to take the broadband component of it and build application on top of that, where we can apply some of the smart city initiative, as well as some of the automated vehicle testing and public safety network on that massive broadband network. So that's the target right now. It's still unclear how we're going to do it, because a lot of the IIJA money coming to the states are heavily still. We know which industry they are coming, but it's not clear how they are coming to the state, how the rural co-ops or electrical companies will be spending that money, in which scope or which work. We are still figuring those out, but I'll have better or clear answer probably middle of next year. I know there is a fund right now. Feds are trying to disburse. It's a very small amount of fund. I think it's $5 million fund to the rural electric co-ops, just to do some pilot project regarding the smart grid. So I'm helping them to kind of like build that project. Basically, I'm finding out a location where there is already broadband because they need solid connectivity to build those kind of networks. So this is my role so far, but I'm seeing my infrastructure role getting expanded in future pretty quickly. So that's my 2 cents on that.
Kirk, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Sandeep if he could get a little bit more detail into the Mobility Institute, I think is what officially that's called.
Yes. That's basically it's a non, if I know correctly, I think it's a nonprofit organization which is part of the ACA. Marisa Walker, one of my colleagues, Senior Vice President of Infrastructure, I'm basically reporting to her when it comes to the infrastructure component of my job. We submitted few applications in partnership with some carriers and also University of Arizona and Arizona State University. Those are mostly the LiDAR-based crash detection system to make this road safer, and also some of the CBRS network, which will actually help us to make sure the vehicles are talking to each other. Those are only for 5 mile or 3.5 mile corridors, just to test them. And that application was submitted to Transportation Secretary directly, and hoping to get some kind of answer by first quarter of next year. That's the details I can tell you at this point without compromising any other information.
Sounds like you've got your work cut out for you. You have no staff and multiple bosses. That's good,
I do, yes.
We're gonna have to figure out how to keep Sandeep in this game.
It's
another quick question would be for Aaron on how the smart region is involved in that overall initiative as it relates to automated vehicles.
Great question. I think Sandeep and I should have a conversation about that.
Look, I mean, I understand we have great stakeholders here in the state, and we are also repositioning ourselves from different angle that how we can all work together. For me, I heavily relied on my partners and my stakeholders before to execute a project. So just because I came in government, it didn't change. So I will follow the same direction I always followed. So please feel free to reach out to me. I am currently like responding emails from last Friday. So I'm really slow when it comes to responding emails because doing multiple meetings and everything. So please be patient with me for a while, at least the month of December, until we hire someone to help me with some other projects and meetings. But I'll definitely get back to you on that.
So Sandeep, while I know very little about smart cities, but it seemed to me I attended a conference fairly recently, and I think I may have mentioned this to Kirk, that I'm glad to see kind of the marriage of broadband and smart cities beginning to happen. As I listened to that conference, that what I thought I heard was that we've got smart cities on this side and broadband on this side, and not really a unified strategy and plan. I could be wrong about that. There's people who know more about that than I do, but that was my perception.
No, you are completely right, Steve. I mean, look, we are talking about smart cities for last 4 or 5 years. I mean, if there is no infrastructure, there is no smart city, period, right? So now that we have money to deploy the infrastructure, we can definitely start talking about the smart cities. It's a requirement. And my last project before I started with SEA was Verizon millimeter wave development for City of San Diego, mostly for Chula Vista, where we deployed a massive citywide IoT network for air quality monitoring, public safety, et cetera, et cetera. If there is, the Crown Castle was the fiber provider for, or backbone provider for the whole project. If there was no high-speed crown fiber, there wouldn't be any any network or smart city initiative from any city. So there are multiple stakeholders involved in the whole process. The technology has to play out. There has to be a great amount of fiber with great capacity. And also cities and states need to come forward and make sure the policies are friendly to deploy this kind of network. So a lot of work needs to be done. And I know we have a lot of experts, but we need to bring them in same platform too.
Okay, thank you.
And
And Leah, you
Sandeep,
have a, you have a
I
comment?
wanted to ask a couple questions. And hi, Sandeep. I'm Leah. I serve on the Arizona Corporation Commission. We regulate the rural electric co-ops. So happy to help with coordination or anything you might need if you run into challenges. But I was curious about the litigation, the potential litigation you mentioned happening in states across the country around mapping, I think you were speaking about. Is that related to telecom companies not providing the information needed to each state, and so those states are pursuing litigation? Is that, could you clarify that, please?
Not really, ma'am. So what happened, FCC map just got released, and they just, I think it got released on 10th of this month. Steve, do you recall when was the day?
I don't.
Probably a week ago, I would say. So they only gave us 1.5 months to go through the challenge process. Basically, what's the challenge process is, states and local government or any state agencies, any individual can go through that mapping and kind of like tell FCC that, hey, the information you have provided for my address or my business is not right. I'm not getting that same kind of speed you are claiming on the carriers have claimed. They only gave us 1.5 months to go through a challenge process that we can dispute that data. And that also in between this holiday, like Thanksgiving, New Year, and Christmas. So we spoke to FCC and NTIA, both. They're pretty reluctant at this point to extend that timeline. So what other states are thinking, if they are not going to extend that timeline, they will probably sue them. Arizona is not in that position or not one of those states. The reason they're doing that, because the money, ultimately the final amount out of the BEAD funding, which will be coming to the state, depends on how many underserved and unserved households we have out from that map. So if the states and our local government does not have enough time to challenge those data, and just to let you know, there are a lot of addresses missing from that map. Like there is address. So for every missing address, I don't want to, again, I choose my word very carefully, but there was some nonprofit study done. And basically for every single household missing, the states will be getting $5,750. So think about that. The state of New York submitted around 70,000 missing address. And we are a rural state, so we should have more addresses, especially from the tribal nations. So the response time is very limited, that we cannot even respond them with a challenge or bunch of bulk data. A lot of states, at least 10 of them, they're way ahead in the game because they hired a consultant beginning of this year for their mapping, but any other state, rural state like Arizona, we didn't have any specific fund for mapping. So we are basically using the money from BEAD initial planning right now for mapping. So we didn't even have this opportunity to hire someone before and do this mapping, get this mapping thing done. So it's kind of like, we are in a situation that if they don't extend that timeline, we will not be able to get the money we should get. So we are going through a process right now. I don't think there will be a litigation. I'm sure they will end up extending that timeline, but cannot count on that. So at least at this point, we will go with the missing addresses or submit all the missing addresses in the state as per our ability. We're hiring a consultant. Basically, they are specialized in maps, going through the RFQ process. And we'll be submitting a challenge at least with the missing addresses. But the other component like quality of service, like adaptability, if it's affordable, those can be done if there is an extension granted. I hope that answers your question. If
Yeah,
not,
and I appreciate the clarification. I wondered, are there specific carriers that did not respond to the mapping exercise and didn't provide information? And if there are, if you would be allowed to share that with me, that would be interesting.
sure. I from the public map which is available, as far as I checked by county, I think they have all provided almost accurate information. Some of the data was a little bit over exaggerated, like if certain area is covered by a carrier for 70%, they said they're covering the whole 100%. And I understand that just to protect their business interest. But if we can also identify that part and get the money, look, one thing carriers need to understand here that if they are already in an area and they would like to deploy a network, their deployment cost is going to be way lower than anyone new who wants to come into that area. So by claiming those 30% household and businesses saying that it's served, they're basically losing money, which will go to them eventually. So we'll have some back channel discussion with them, and we'll make sure that we are correcting that part too.
Okay, thank you very much.
And Leah, it's not even as much a problem, or only part of a problem, that providers haven't reported addresses. Most of the unreported addresses, are maybe not in the data fabric at all. And so there was a year-plus long effort, I believe CostQuest was the vendor in the end, to have a database they called a data fabric that represented every occupied and otherwise utilized structure in the US. And as you know, in rural areas, a house can be, a mile from X marker, or, there's a lot of places that traditionally have difficulty being mapped or known in some way. So the biggest shortcoming is addresses who haven't been reported by providers and haven't been integrated to the data fabric initially. And that's really an extremely difficult exercise to ferret out the gaps, the missing ones. And that's what, part of that, as Sandeep says, the statement is a different problem layered on top of that.
And also on top of that, I mean, I think CostQuest, I heard from different sources, I don't know if it's true or not, they're basically using the old DSL household data. So if you have a house in Flagstaff and you never subscribed an internet service in that household address in your life, basically that house does not exist in FCC map. So if you ever subscribed anything in that address or in that household, yes. So the reason I can only think of my house is missing because it's a new build house and no one reported this because when the report time was due, so that's why it's missing from the fabric. I'm not too worried about any Maricopa County or Pinal County or Pima County. Yes, there are some data missing, but vastly there are data missing from rural counties. So if we take data from a rural co-op and run a script like side by side that, okay, this is what FCC is talking about in Apache County that it's covered. And this is what we have the address data from a rural co-op. If we run that side by side, electricity, water, gas, we are assuming at least 98% people are covered. So we'll be able to filter out the unserved addresses and send those to FCC. That's the initial plan within this very short time frame. And ACA team and our consultant will be working through the holidays. So feel free to reach out if you have any resources or you would like to help us with this thing. Look, this is a one-time opportunity. I don't know if there will be another infrastructure package in future, especially the situation we are in right now. So we would like to make sure that we don't want to leave a single dime on Fed's table at this point if we are eligible for those funds. There are nonprofit organizations who did some study. Just to do mapping right, we can maximize our funding by 20%. Just a ballpark number I'm talking about, like missing addresses and quality of service. There are areas where carriers reported that they are covering those areas with gig speed. I don't want to take any name, but I know the service is really, really bad. And we are supposed to do a quality of services study to make sure that we're letting FCC know, yes, the service is there, but it's not great. It's not, the customer service is not good. There are some terms in FCC to verify the quality of service. Something like how quickly they're responding to a technical support, like how quickly they can send a tech to the address. If someone requests an internet connection, how long it takes to deploy before it deploys an internet connection. So those kind of parameters, we are tracking them. We'll do a quality of service study as part of our mapping procedure too. The question here is, the issue here is we don't have enough time. Now, what people or states are offering at this point, by June 30th, all the states, all 50 states and US territories should receive a baseline $100 million grant out of the BEAD funding. Then they will, NTIA will basically do a calculation on the underserved and unserved community here in the state, and then kind of send us the rest of the money. What states are asking, any other state which is not ready for a mapping challenge, what other states and us, we are trying to convey to FCC that and NTIA that, hey, don't just end the challenge process by January 15th, just give us the $100 million that we can start the program. $100 million is still a lot of money to start a program. And then take all the data by June 30th, and then decide that how much money the other states will get. So that we are trying to push the deadline, but I don't know how successful that effort will be. Let's see, but we have some backup plans too. If things come to that point, we can respond with some other congressional delegation system, and also leverage our offices to make sure that they're listening what we have to say. But I don't want to get us stuck in that point right now, but that's a long shot.
Paul, you had comment or question?
Yeah, a couple of questions. When it comes to like mapping, and I've looked at the mapping quite a bit since it was released, and there's certainly providers that are listed that should not be listed. I know I even looked up my own, you look up your own address and you go, who's covering me? And I found a provider, and it's like, they're in California. They're actually not here, yet they're listed. And it's like, okay, they're not even covering me. So that's something that's like, there would be a challenge there. But not having enough time to actually provide sufficient response back is actually going to be a detriment to everyone long term. So I can understand why there's lawsuits that are being considered by other states, because it doesn't provide the time, especially over the winter break, Christmas period, right?
Right.
I mean,
right.
People are just not around. And for us to be able to provide really good quality responses, which, to be frank, I think we all want to provide a good quality response. We've got to go through and check things out right down. Yes, you're saying down to the actual individual residents, but getting that other qualitative and quantitative data back and actually querying and conducting some sort of survey, that's going to take a phenomenal effort
right.
to be able to do that.
I agree with you.
The other thing that I would say, that when it comes to the mapping information, it's great to see this data presented in such a way that's accessible to the public.
Mm-hmm.
But what it doesn't do, and I posted a link in the chat, how there's a notice that came out from the FCC on the 23rd about the ACP data and about getting pricing, and that's relating to ACP. reporting once a year. Great idea, moving in the right direction. But what I'm not seeing is any sort of pricing information that they should be putting, I would say, alongside the mapping information, even if it's just a range. Because what's not being done is any sort of calculation of like creating an affordability index. Because we know what the median incomes for some of these households are in particular census tracts, but there's no affordability index. So just because, yes, you can get a gig may not be affordable at all. And I think that's something that maybe that's outside of the scope of the FCC, but there has to be an affordability index put in there somewhere from an equity standpoint to be able to align funding where it should be going, or where it is needed. Because yes, the ACP program is great. It's for as long as it lasts. I am a little bit of a pragmatic person, so it's like eventually it'll probably go away, unless it's going to be perpetually funded. But that's another discussion for another time. Now, you also mentioned that there's the posting for like December 6th, sorry, the 16th. What was the total value of that posting that you mentioned?
What do you, sorry, I
was it an RFP or an RFQ?
It's an RFQ, yes. And
okay,
the RFQ
what was the
is,
total value of that?
are you asking the total value in consulting?
The total value overall of the RFQ.
I don't think I can disclose that information.
Okay, all right. Thought I'd ask, right? I didn't know, I wasn't sure what the total grant amount was.
It's not a grant. It's not a RFQ for grant or something. It's an RFQ that consultant can come on board and help SCA.
Oh, is that what it is? Okay, all right.
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
And coming back to your question, Paul, when you spoke about affordability, and we definitely thought about it. So just for everyone, you will see one point in the mapping as well as the bid part. It says the cost modeling study. Basically, what we are going to do, we will deploy a cost modeling study. Suppose you take a small area, suppose Sholo. If we are deploying a network there to cover 100% household, I know Sholo is covered. I just took it like on top of my head. And we'd like to cover 100% household. We will do a study saying that, okay, we'll be spending give or take X amount of money for this location. So as per this expense will be disbursing to a private company who will be building this network, $70, $80, $100, $120. That should be the rate for gig speed or service. So this time, if the deployment cost is mad high for a company, we'll make sure that, okay, it's justifiable that they are charging X amount of money, which is normal than national average because the deployment cost was high, and it's high to maintain that network. It's justifiable. But in a regular area, without any geographical challenge or any other middle mile challenge, if someone is deploying a network and that network and they are charging customer way over the top, we are going to prevent that from the get-go. So there will be a cost modeling study which will define a range that you can only charge customer between this to this. If you agree with this thing, please apply for grant and we'll disperse the money.
Yeah, thanks for that information. That I really think a cost modeling study is definitely needed because the prices are all over the shop. And yeah, as you've seen from somebody else's research in the last month or two that was released, I mean, there's really some central needs there to bring light to that conversation. So, but thank you.
And Paul, something else that will bring light to it, not in time or part of this challenge process, is what the FCC is now calling, I don't know, broadband nutrition labeling. It's like food labeling. There's a new parallel track for something we'll see later this year that will have more information about affordability, about price plans, about guaranteed service levels. So that will be helpful, not in time for map challenges or part of that, but as next year progresses.
Right. And
I'm sorry, go
Coming
ahead.
back to this, the first question, Paul, where you mentioned that you saw in your address, you saw a company from California. I know exactly whose company you are talking about. They went through a RDOF process, and they basically own that RDOF frequency and area where you live in. I'm not sure 100% those are wireless services, but I don't know. I'm sure everyone knows in this call, but any services which is unlicensed frequency satellites, they are listed there, but they will not be considered. So when you are going to that map, go from the settings, make sure you are just selecting, there is an option called all WED and license frequencies. Just click that option, then see if it's served or not. That's the best way to filter the map.
So Sandeep, a lot of those companies that filed and won RDOF bids for 1 gig service actually used equipment that didn't function, it wouldn't have solved the problem. And many of them are currently in, they're making appeals to the FCC to use newer equipment, which in my opinion should have invalidated their bids. But as far as I know, some of them are still in the appeal process.
Right.
But they are all unlicensed. None of them are CBRS. So they're not going to be invalidated. They're not going to prevent NTIA, funding for those areas.
Yes.
So I apologize. I have a question to follow up on Paul's a little bit. So what is the bid process you're describing where the state gets to make that decision versus the NTIA versus going through the NTIA? Are your specifications going to be any different than the NTIA's?
Sorry, what do you mean?
Is the state of Arizona going to have any difference in the rules that the NTIA has deployed? Do you have flexibility in that? For example, yeah, because what we're seeing on the maps are companies advertising rates that they do not have at all in the area, in some of our areas on our preliminary analysis. So we want to know. So the state of Arizona will submit or will present a separate bid structure for these areas that you're aware of. Then would that be accurate?
Yes, if the time give us that flexibility.
Okay. Thank you.
Just a clarification again. BID NTIA is not telling us how we should deploy. We can still deploy unlicensed frequency if needed in certain areas, rural areas, if we want to. NTIA just letting us know, hey, this is how much you are getting. It's up to you how you want to deploy it. And we have this 270-day process, which is coming up pretty soon, to come up with a plan what we will do with our specific areas. And that's where we're looking for consultants and everyone else.
Do you need any help from private companies? Obviously, we have some of those resources that you need.
Yeah, we'll definitely seek for feedback. But at this point, yeah, I think our consultant will, and us, me personally, will directly work with the companies in those areas or anyone who's interested to build a plan.
I'm just offering the idea that many of the companies you're dealing with we already have those resources in-house that could alleviate some of the load that you guys are dealing with.
I'll get back to you on that, Rory.
All right.
I have a couple of questions. Hopefully they're pretty quick.
Sure.
In Yavapai County, when we've been doing our deployment of our broadband with the 2 ISPs we selected, we're noticing that in a lot of areas, the speeds that are advertised, as has been mentioned previously, are not what people are getting, and what's listed on the mapping is not accurate. Is there an auditing plan that the state of Arizona has to verify the speed of what these ISPs are saying they're getting?
Yes, sir. That is the quality of service scope I was talking about earlier. Definitely that's the plan, because again, without going into too much details, when I was talking about over exaggeration of the service level, I was thinking about Yavapai County in my head. I know that what's going on. We are definitely taking that. I understand that FCC or NTIA is not accepting the speed test data, but then again, they released a speed test app which is an internal app from their side, it's very confusing. Sometimes I'm like, what are they thinking? So I would say that yes, that's part of the scope in the RFQ. If you once it posted, I think it should be in next 15 minutes. So once that posted, you will see there is a scope for our mapping vendor or mapping consultant who will be helping us with this thing to do a county-wide survey on the speeds as well as the public satisfaction. So we will take those data, we will still submit that to FCC and NTIA. The question here is that campaign takes long time. If FCC is only considering January 13th as deadline for challenges, then that data will not be considered, unfortunately. But if FCC is changing their policy and saying that anything before June 30th will be acceptable, we're in a good shape. So that's hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and just one other quick question.
Yeah.
So as far as the missing addresses go, if our GIS department in theory should have all the permitted buildings, structures, properties, everything that's added. So is there a way that we can just take that data and compare it against what the FCC has? And that seems like it should be a pretty easy way to find the missing addresses.
Yes, sir. That's the plan. We from our ACA leadership team, we are meeting all the county supervisors on December 9th to start a process. We just want to go through the right channel. So you will see that request coming into your department soon if you're part of the GIS team. But anyone in this call who would like to help or at least expedite the process for their county cities, please feel free to directly send me an email. I'll make that thing happen.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions or comments? I know we're over time and appreciate you all hanging in there. I don't think we're going to do kibitzing today since we're already running a little overtime. But Sandy, thank you very much. I know you got full plate. Appreciate you taking the time today, and we look forward to continuing to collaborate with you.
And Steve, thank you so much again for inviting me. I'll try to attend from the very beginning for next session, but I would say that we can talk about BEAD and digital equity whole day, but let's everyone in this call, think about the mapping side, any suggestion, any feedback. Let's make this call more of like mapping instead of BEAD and digital equity at this point, at least until middle of January.
And Sandy, maybe what we need to do is to have a separate meeting to continue rather than trying to squeeze it all into this meeting. So let's chat about that and see what makes sense. Okay. Any other questions or comments for Sandeep or anything else that people want to share before we end for today? Okay,
keep going strong, Sandy.
I'm sorry. Kirk, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thanks, Sandeep, and good luck to you and anything we can do to help. Hey, Steve and Paul and Corey, if there was any time that maybe kibitzing could have some real beef on it, it might be today, though, Steve. So I would leave that open just in case.
Okay, well, we can do that.
It's Rory, by the way, not Corey.
No, I was talking about Corey from Yavapai. Sorry, Rory. Didn't mean to exclude you, but I was.
My apologies. I will accept these. Sorry about that.
So I'm gonna stop recording now. And again, as Kirk suggested, if anybody wants to stay online, you're welcome to do so. If not, we'll see you all next week.